there was a thought you put away. Not deleted, put away. You set it in a specific internal drawer, closed it with something that functioned like a decision, and moved back into the ordinary mechanics of your day. And it stayed there. For a while, it stayed there. But something about today made the drawer insufficient. The thought came back, not louder, not more dramatic, just closer. Impossible to maintain at the distance you had established for it. You tried redirecting, you found the next task, the next conversation, the next thing your hands could be doing, and the thought moved with you, not frantically, almost patiently, with the specific quality of something that has decided on its own terms and without your permission that the filing system is no longer adequate, that it has somewhere more important to be than stored. You are not spiraling. That's the first thing to understand about what's happening in you right now. The quality of this is not panic and it is not obsession. It is something quieter and more insistent than either. Something that belongs in a different category from the emotions you know how to manage. Your hands are still. Your face is composed. And beneath both of those things, something is surfacing that has been in storage for long enough that it now carries the specific weight of everything that happened while it waited. This is not random. This is not your mind misbehaving. The field shifted today, precisely, structurally, at the exact degree of a sky arrangement that does not come together this way by accident. You are here because something navigated you here, not the algorithm, something older and more deliberate than any platform that has ever held your attention. Before we go deeper, anchor yourself into this moment. Like this video, subscribe, and comment below. I'm ready to see clearly. This isn't just a comment, it's an energetic declaration, a signal sent into the field that you're present and open to what arrives next. Because what is being asked of you right now is not dramatic. It is the opposite of dramatic. It is the willingness to stop managing the distance between yourself and a truth that has been trying to reach you for longer than you have allowed yourself to know. Here is something that does not get said often enough about the people who find themselves in this particular transmission. What qualifies you for this moment is not your suffering. It is not the volume of your longing or the elegance of your patience or even the consistency of your hope. What qualifies you is something more specific and more difficult. It is the work you kept doing when there was nothing external confirming that the work was producing anything, the internal labor that happened in complete silence. The refining, the examining, the quiet updating of your own understanding about what you feel, what you need, and what you are actually willing to accept, all of it performed without any feedback loop from the outside world, no signal from them, no confirmation from circumstances, no visible shift in the situation that would have told you, yes, what you are building inside yourself is real, it is landing, it matters. You built it anyway, not because you were performing patience, because something in you recognized that the work was real, regardless of whether anything outside was reflecting it back. That kind of internal labor, sustained, unrewarded, continued in the specific absence of acknowledgement, is precisely what today's alignment recognizes. The door that opened this morning does not open for people who simply wanted resolution hard enough. It opens for people who worked for it in the only place work like this can be done, inside, invisibly, without applause. What is active in the sky today is a precise collision between two planetary forces that govern the most private territories of human emotional life, and understanding what they actually do, stripped of any astrological language, will make what you are feeling today suddenly completely legible. The moon, in this configuration, has moved into a position of exact friction with Venus, a perfect 0-degree square. To understand what this does, you need to understand what each of these forces governs at their most basic level. The moon is not simply about emotion. The moon governs what the interior self does when no one is watching, the movements of feeling that happen below the surface of what you present to the world, the private weather of the self, the part of you that knows things before your reasoning mind has assembled the evidence for them. The moon is the interior's raw, unfiltered signal. It does not dress for company. It does not negotiate with social presentation or personal management. When the moon is activated in this particular configuration, it does not ask permission before it surfaces what it carries. Venus, on the other side of this square, governs something that is often simplified into love, but is actually more layered and more precise than that. Venus governs what you value, what you are drawn toward at the level of the soul, what you find beautiful and worth moving toward, and critically, what has been given the care and attention that signifies deep valuing. Venus is the force that makes certain connections feel categorically different from others, not more romantic necessarily, but more real, more charged with the particular electricity of genuine recognition. Venus is what makes something feel worth keeping, worth returning to, worth honesty. When these two forces form an exact square, when the moon's raw interior knowing collides at perfect 90 degrees with Venus's record of what has been genuinely valued, the result is not gentle. A square is not a harmonious aspect. It is an aspect of pressure, of friction, of two forces that do not resolve into each other but instead create an irresistible tension that demands something be acknowledged. What this specific square produces in the emotional field is an involuntary surfacing of what has been privately held and quietly valued, felt with a sudden physical urgency that bypasses all the careful filing systems that were keeping it managed. Surrounding this exact Moon-Venus square, the sky has assembled a supporting architecture of unusual weight. The Moon is simultaneously in opposition to Mars, which means the part of you that moves, that acts, that initiates, is in direct tension with the interior signal that is surfacing. You want to do something with this feeling, and something in you also knows that the action impulse is exactly what needs to be held in check right now. Mercury, the planet governing how truth is named and communicated, is sitting in precise sextile to Venus, creating an opening for honest expression that has not existed in this form before. The things that were unfindable in language are becoming findable. The exact words for what you have been carrying are beginning to surface alongside the feeling itself. This is not nostalgia. This is not emotional volatility dressed up as significance. This is the specific structural opening of a window that does not open this way by chance. And today, at this exact alignment, the things that were hidden in the filing system are coming into the light. Not because you forced them, because the sky stopped allowing them to stay filed. This portal does not activate for everyone who is experiencing emotional turbulence today. Turbulence alone is not the qualifier. What activates this specific window is something more precise. It is what you did during the long, unremarked stretch of time that preceded it. There is a particular kind of person who keeps going with an internal process when the external world has gone entirely quiet, when there is no incoming signal, no response, no acknowledgement, no movement from the situation that would confirm the work is landing. Most people eventually shift their orientation toward what is actually showing up. They recalibrate toward the available. This is not weakness, this is efficiency. This is how most people survive emotional silence. But you did something different, not because you were unable to shift, but because something in you recognized that the process you were in the middle of was real, and that stopping it because it wasn't being externally confirmed would be a specific kind of betrayal of what you actually knew. So you kept going, in the specific absence of feedback. With the work producing no visible results, no external landmarks, nothing you could point to and say, this is proof that what I am doing inside is making anything happen out there. What you built during that period is not pride. It is something more structural than that. And what you carry today, the specific interior that makes today's alignment land in you differently than it lands in someone who did not do that work, is a direct result of having continued when continuation offered nothing immediate in return. That was not abandonment. That was preparation. That was not being overlooked. That was being protected. That was not failure. That was calibration. You are not arriving at this moment raw and in need. You are arriving calibrated, refined by a period that asked more of you than it gave back. That specific combination, work sustained without reward, understanding deepened without confirmation, is what makes you capable of receiving today accurately, not through the distortion of desperate wanting, but through the clarity of someone who has already done the interior work that the moment requires. And what that position makes possible is this: you can receive what arrives today without needing it to complete something that was already incomplete in you. The difference between those two receiving postures changes everything about what you actually get to keep. The universe does not delay because it is indifferent. It delays because it is precise. There is a version of this that arrived 6 months ago, and that version, no matter how much you wanted it then, would have landed in a fundamentally different interior than the one you carry now. 6 months ago, you would have received any movement, any signal, any partial presence, any acknowledgement that the connection was still alive, while you were still carrying an unresolved question inside you about your own worth in this dynamic. Not consciously, not in a way you could have named or easily defended against, but the question would have been there, operating just below the threshold of your awareness, making the dynamic about something beyond what the connection itself was offering. You would have arrived at the contact still needing it to answer something, still bringing to the table a hunger that, even at its most sophisticated, was also a kind of vulnerability that would have bent the signal. Their presence would have been filtered through that question. Their words would have been heard not just as what they were saying, but as evidence in a case you were still building about whether you were capable of being genuinely chosen and genuinely met. And that distortion would have made the whole thing about the question rather than about the contact. What arrives now, if it arrives, can be received as connection, not as confirmation. There is a difference between those two things that changes the entire shape of what you are able to build. This is why the delay lasted as long as it did. Not because the universe was waiting for them to be ready, not because the timing required patience on your part, because the version of you that could receive this clearly, without the question bending the signal, without need creating a distortion field around what was actually being offered, had not yet finished forming. Saturn governs these delays, and Saturn is not cruel. It is structural. It holds a door closed, not because it wants to, but because the architecture on your side needs to be complete before the door can hold the weight of what opening it would bring. The silence was not their answer. It was the universe's answer. And the universe's answer was not no, it was not yet. And specifically, not yet for you, not yet for the version of you that needed to complete this formation first. That delay is now complete. Not because time passed, because you changed, and those are not the same reason. What you may not have access to, what is genuinely difficult to see from inside your own life, is what is happening on the other side of this connection right now. This is not speculation. This is what the planetary mechanics of today do to a specific type of interior. And if you understand how the person connected to you has been managing what they feel, you will understand why today is uniquely pressured for them in a way that no amount of their own strategy can fully contain. The person in your field is a compartmentalizer. They have not suppressed what they feel about you, and they have not constructed elaborate reasons to explain why the silence makes sense. What they have done is something more sophisticated and, in some ways, more revealing. They built a room for it, a separate, organized, private internal space where what they feel about you lives on its own terms. They visit it on their schedule. They maintain it carefully. They have, over time, become quite skilled at stepping in and out of that room without allowing its contents to bleed into the rest of their operating life. The room is orderly. The room is, by their own private assessment, completely manageable. The room is also, as of today, impossible to stay out of. Because a square between the Moon and Venus at 0 degrees of orb does not respect partition walls. It does not recognize the distinction between the room where I keep this and the rest of my life. What it does, specifically, precisely, at the level of the body before the mind has any defensive strategy in place, is remove the insulation between the compartments. The feelings they have been visiting on their own terms stop waiting for an invitation. They move through the walls. The physical sensation of this, for the compartmentalizer, is distinctive. It is not the dramatic crash of suppression failing. It is something more like the persistent awareness of a door that will not stay closed. They redirect their attention, and the awareness comes back. They move into a task, and the awareness is there inside the task. They reach for the familiar reassurance that the room is orderly and the management is working, and what they find instead is that the orderliness itself has become conspicuous. The fact that they built the room, the fact that the room exists at all, the fact that the maintenance of the room requires the kind of ongoing interior labor that you do not perform for things that don't matter. Today, Mercury's precise sextile to Venus makes something else happen alongside the physical intrusion. It makes the truth in the room findable in language, not just felt, almost speakable. They may not speak it. Do not expect them to. What they do with that proximity to language is their own internal territory to navigate. But the recognition is active. What they feel, what you mean, what the connection has been sitting in that private room waiting to become. It is alive in them right now with a specificity and weight it has not carried in months. Once that recognition ignites, it does not go quiet. It only waits for courage to catch up to it. This is the moment the work either was real or it wasn't. Not as a verdict, as a revelation. You are standing at a fork in the road that looks identical from the outside. Two directions, both available. The difference between them is entirely interior, and it is entirely everything. Timeline A is the version of you that tries to control the shape of what happens next. This is not a malicious impulse. This is what the mind does when it has been managing uncertainty long enough that management has become its primary orientation. In Timeline A, you approach what is moving toward you with a particular internal grip, a hand already reaching to steer it toward the version of resolution you have decided is acceptable. You have a picture of how this should land. You have criteria for what constitutes success. You have, without fully meaning to, already mapped the acceptable shapes of arrival, and you are primed to evaluate incoming reality against that map rather than to simply receive it as what it actually is. This grip is not visible from the outside. It looks like openness. It looks like readiness. From inside your own experience, it feels like appropriate awareness, like not being naive, like protecting yourself from disappointment. But what it actually does is create a subtle but permanent distortion field between you and whatever is genuinely arriving. What reaches you in Timeline A is not the raw truth of the situation. It is the truth as filtered through the shape you are already holding. Timeline B is not the version of you that stops caring about the outcome. It is the version that has become capable of something more specific and more difficult, allowing the situation to reveal its own shape without your hands on it. In Timeline B, you arrive at this window without the map of acceptable shapes. Not because you have become passive or undiscerning. The work of the last months has made you more discerning than you have ever been, not less. But the discernment in Timeline B is applied after arrival, not before. You allow the truth of the situation to land first, uninterrupted by the shape you were holding for it. And then, from the position of someone who has received it accurately, you bring the discernment to bear. One contracts, one opens. The physical difference between these two timelines is not subtle once you learn to recognize it. The soul does not ask this question to punish you. It asks it because the answer determines everything that follows, not as consequence, but as direction. The question that separates these two timelines is not, do I trust this person? That question looks outward for its answer. The real question, the one that lives beneath that question and carries genuine weight, is this: can you let the truth of this situation be whatever it actually is, even if it is not the shape you prepared for? Sit with that. Feel where in your body it lands. If it creates a contraction, a subtle tightening, a reaching for control, that is Timeline A responding. If it creates something closer to stillness, the specific, unfamiliar stillness of someone who no longer needs to manage the shape of arrival, that is Timeline B already in you, already operating, already real. That question, sat with honestly, is capable of collapsing an old karmic cycle permanently. What you have been living through is not simply a complicated connection. It is a soul contract, one of the precise agreements made at a level below conscious memory that determines what specific lessons must be activated, confronted, and integrated before the soul can move into its next structural state. Soul contracts are not romantic arrangements. They are not promises of love or guarantee of union. They are agreements about what must be learned, at depth, at cost, without the possibility of bypassing. And this contract came to teach you something that is entirely about your relationship with your own interior, even though it arrived dressed as a story about another person. The lesson this contract was built to deliver is trust, specifically the difference between control and faith. Between the impulse to manage outcomes in order to feel safe inside the not knowing and the capacity to allow what is genuinely real to arrive in its own form and on its own timing without requiring advanced knowledge of its shape to remain stable. This is not a simple lesson. It is not achievable through intention or decision. It is a structural retraining of the nervous system's relationship with uncertainty, and it takes exactly as long as it takes, not a moment less. You have been a profoundly skilled manager of uncertainty. You have, over the course of this contract, become expert at the specific posture of holding something open while simultaneously ensuring that the openness doesn't expose you to a level of vulnerability that feels structurally unsafe. You were not wrong to develop that skill. The conditions that produced it were real. The protection it offered was real. But the contract was always pointing toward the moment when that skill, as sophisticated as it became, would need to be set down in favor of something that does not feel like a skill at all. Something that feels more like surrender, even though it is actually the opposite of surrender. It is the deepest form of courage the interior knows how to produce. Saturn enforces these contracts, not through punishment, through structure. Saturn does not allow the lesson to be bypassed through suffering alone, or through time alone, or even through the genuine desire to have learned it. Saturn holds the contract open until the lesson is not performed but integrated, until the body carries it, not just the mind, until you are not doing trust, until you are trust. The distinction is not semantic, it is everything. Here is the grief of this. You did not choose to need this lesson. The need was placed in you by experiences that preceded this contract, by a nervous system that learned accurately, given what it was given, that uncertainty is dangerous and that control is protection. That version of the learning was correct in its original context. The grief lives in the gap between what you learned to do in order to survive and what the soul is now asking you to become in order to arrive. That gap is real. It deserves more than a sentence. The contract was never a promise of forever. It was a guarantee of transformation. Completion of this contract does not look like certainty. It does not arrive as the feeling of knowing how this ends. It looks like this. You can hold the open question of what comes next, genuinely open, without a hidden preference already installed beneath the surface that is quietly steering you toward a specific outcome, and feel stable inside that openness. Not performing stability, not white-knuckling through the uncertainty and calling it trust. Actually, structurally stable. The way a building is stable, not because nothing can move it, but because what it is built on does not require specific weather to remain solid. The contract was always about what you were becoming, not about whether they stayed to witness it. What you became is already real, regardless of what they do next. Your body received this before your mind had finished processing what it means. That is not confusion. That is the order in which real integration actually moves. Notice what is happening in the specific physical architecture of your experience right now, not as possibilities but as facts already in motion. Sleep is arriving differently, not longer necessarily, but earlier, and the residue it leaves in the first minutes of waking has changed its character. Where it once delivered a brief orienting awareness of something unresolved, the first thought carrying the weight of the open question, it now arrives without that immediate gravitational pull. The morning has a different quality of floor, a quiet in the chest that has no urgency behind it, not numbness. You know the difference now. Numbness is the body shutting down its signal. This is the body completing a transmission and settling into the new frequency. There is a name that has been moving through your awareness differently. Where it once arrived as a disruption, pulling the body's attention with a force that required management, that required you to notice you had been pulled and consciously redirect, it is beginning to pass through more like weather. Present, real, not nothing, but no longer requiring the body to brace around it the way it once did. The hook is releasing from the nerve. The specific quality of your stillness has changed. When you are seated, when you are between tasks, when the ordinary motion of your day creates a momentary pause, the pause no longer fills immediately with the restless search for what comes next. You are not eliminating the restlessness. The restlessness itself is quieting. The body is learning slowly and without announcement that sitting inside a moment rather than preparing for the next one is not a form of failure. It is a form of arrival. Your body is not confused. It is recalibrating. Integration does not feel like the dramatic clearing you may have been waiting for. It does not arrive as relief or resolution or the specific emotional release you might have imagined would mark the completion of something like this. It feels more like the specific quality of a room that has been rearranged, not empty, not different in its dimensions, but altered in the placement of things so that you move through it without the small, constant collisions that used to be invisible because they were so routine. The settling is not absence, it is presence of a different kind. And shutdown, the state this is sometimes confused with, does not feel like this. Shutdown creates a flatness, a reduction of signal, a quality of nothing in particular that is its own specific texture. What you are experiencing now has texture. It is settling, not stopping, alive, not closed. When the body stops preparing for loss, it begins preparing for arrival. What begins to stabilize now is not a feeling, it is a structure, a new internal architecture that organizes itself differently than what preceded it, and that produces a fundamentally different quality of daily life, not through dramatic change, but through the quiet shift of what is no longer consuming energy. Decisions feel cleaner, not because life has simplified. The external facts of your life are what they are. Because the internal conflict that used to run beneath every decision, the part of you that wanted one thing while another part was managing the wanting, monitoring the wanting, guarding against the vulnerability of the wanting being visible, has dissolved at its root. Where there was once a negotiation happening below the surface of every choice, there is now something closer to a single signal, coherent, direct, without the second guessing that used to arrive before the second guessing even had a specific object. What used to feel exciting but draining, the specific category of things that carried the charge of possibility while simultaneously requiring the expenditure of enormous interior energy to maintain, now registers as hollow before it even fully arrives. You recognize it faster. The body identifies it as a pattern it has already categorized, already processed, already finished with. This is not joylessness. This is efficiency of a different kind. The efficiency of a system that no longer has to expend energy distinguishing between what is genuinely nourishing and what was only mimicking nourishment convincingly. What used to feel like safety now feels like a ceiling. The arrangement that once offered the comfort of predictability, the known quantity, the managed expectation, the familiar constraint, is beginning to register as what it actually is. A space too small for what you have become, not a criticism of what it was, not a judgment of what it offered when you needed it, simply an accurate perception of the fit between who you are now and what that structure was built to contain. The fit has changed. The body knows it. The universe is no longer trying to guide you toward alignment. It is beginning to respond to the alignment you already carry. Synchronicities are changing their character. They stop arriving as nudges, as the specific quality of a small sign that seems to be suggesting a direction to, and begin arriving as confirmations. There is a difference in the directional experience of those two things. Nudges are received by someone who is still searching. Confirmations are received by someone who already knows where they are. You are beginning to occupy the second position more often than the first. You are not becoming someone new, you are becoming undivided, and undivided people move through the world differently, not louder, not harder, but cleaner. After this activation, certain things become structurally unavailable to your nervous system, not as a decision you made, not as a position you adopted, but as a biological reality produced by what has genuinely shifted in the interior. Being held at emotional arm's length by someone who knows exactly what they feel, this is no longer something your system can accommodate as a standard feature of connection. It used to be. You are not the same person who once accepted that as the cost of proximity. The acceptance required a specific kind of interior arrangement, one where your own certainty was somehow less real, less pressing, less insistent than their ambiguity. That arrangement has disassembled itself, not through a decision, through the simple fact that the interior architecture that made it possible no longer exists. You cannot rebuild it any more than you could deliberately unknow something you have genuinely integrated. Carrying the full weight of a connection while the other person remains comfortable in its ambiguity, this too has become incompatible with the nervous system you now carry. There is a specific quality to being the one who is fully present in a dynamic where presence is one-directional, where you are bringing the full weight of your clarity and your investment into a space where the other person is still deciding how much weight to bring or whether to bring any at all. You used to be able to sustain that position indefinitely. What it required from you felt for a long time like something you could afford. You have recalibrated what you can afford. Not because the love diminished, because the cost register changed. Waiting for honesty that the other person has already decided you don't deserve, this arrives now the way a wrong note arrives to a trained ear, not after deliberation, not after assembling evidence, immediately, with the specific automatic recognition of something that does not match the frequency of what you know to be real contact. The body identifies the dissonance before the mind has named it. It does not require confirmation from the other person. It does not wait to see if the signal clarifies. It simply knows, the way the body knows what it does and does not recognize as compatible with its current state. This is not hardness. This is discernment made permanent by experience. Love does not leave your life after this. It upgrades. Everything that enters from here must meet you where you actually stand. If this soul steps back into your field now, they will feel the difference immediately, not because you have changed your surface presentation, but because the ground beneath you is different. And the question you bring to that moment is not, "Do I still want this?" You know the answer to that. The question that matters, the only one that carries actual information, is whether what returns is the same version of the dynamic or something genuinely different. You are not waiting for this with held breath. That is the first important thing to understand about where you are now. The held breath was a feature of a different interior, one that needed the arrival to complete something that had been left structurally open. That openness has closed. Not because you withdrew, not because you protected yourself, not because you stopped caring, because the internal work that the caring was pointing you toward is complete enough that you no longer require the external arrival to validate the completion. You are present. You are grounded. You are capable, perhaps for the first time in this connection, of seeing clearly, without hope distorting the incoming signal, without fear distorting it in the other direction. What arrives will be received accurately. This is what accurate reception looks like from the inside. You are available to be genuinely moved by what is real and genuinely unimpressed by what is performed. If they return with the full weight of what they have carried in that private room, with the specific honesty that this transit has brought to the surface of their awareness, you will feel it, not as hope, as recognition. And if what returns is the familiar architecture of someone who missed the feeling but has not yet genuinely moved toward the truth, if what arrives is the partial presence, the careful distance, the warmth that does not quite commit, you will feel that too, with the same accuracy, without the distortion of wanting it to be more than it is. If they do not return at all, the question of what that confirms shifts. Non-return is no longer the answer to the question, "Am I worth choosing?" That question has been retired from active service. Non-return now simply reveals something about where they are in their own process, about whether courage has caught up to the recognition that ignited in them today. It says something true about them. It says nothing new about you. Both outcomes leave you whole, not as a consolation, as a structural reality. Your wholeness is no longer contingent on which one happens. The ground beneath you does not move in either direction. Whether they arrive or not, you are no longer defined by which one happens. That is the shift. That is everything. If something in this message landed somewhere specific, not just passed through your mind but settled somewhere in your body, then do one thing right now. Like this video, not as a gesture, as a signal to yourself that you were present for this, that you received it consciously. Subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. These transmissions are timed. What activates here today builds directly into what arrives in the next window, and arriving there without having received this is like walking into the second act without knowing how the first one ended. And in the comments, write, "I receive clearly now." Say it out loud as you type it, not for anyone reading, for your own nervous system. Words spoken with the full weight of their meaning complete something in the body that reading them silently leaves unfinished. Finally, If someone in your life is standing at a threshold they cannot quite name, share this with them. Not because you need to explain it, because your soul already knows who needs to hear it. What is already here does not require your belief to be real. The door did not open when you decided to trust it. It opened because something in the architecture of this moment, in the specific alignment of forces that do not move on human schedules, made opening the only structurally available option. You did not create this. You earned access to it. And what has arrived in the field around you today, quiet, certain, without the need for fanfare, has been making its way toward this exact coordinate for longer than either direction on your timeline can fully account for. The thought that wouldn't stay filed was not your mind betraying you. It was the signal arriving early before the door was fully open. The door is open now. What was trying to reach you already has.